Hey, Rick Sayes here. Welcome to Season 3 of the Outdoor Biz Podcast, recorded at the Surf City Studios in Costa Mesa, California. I have another great season of interviews with retailers, brand managers, athletes, executives, and others in the outdoor biz to share their stories, tips, advice, productivity tricks and hacks, and ideas you can use to take your career business to the next level. Today's podcast is brought to you by InMotion Hosting. I've used InMotion Hosting to host my websites for years. Rick Sayes Photos, Blogs, Stillwater's Consulting, and the Outdoor Biz Podcast are all hosted with InMotion Hosting. If your New Year's resolution is to publish a blog, produce a podcast, or simply secure a domain name, go to theoutdoorbizpodcast.com/InMotion and sign up with them today. They make it simple and quick to get a new site up and running with easy installation tools. That's theoutdoorbizpodcast.com/InMotion. Get going today. Fun chat today with Dan Austin from Austin Adventures. He and his family have built a top-notch adventure travel business offering great trips around the world. Dan talks about how he got into adventure travel and some of the key requirements to building a successful top-of-the-line adventure biz. Enjoy. Hey, Dan, welcome to the show.
Well, thanks, Rick. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, great to have you on. So I'm excited to talk to another fellow adventure traveler who's traveled. You've run trips all over the world, I see. That's pretty fun.
Yeah, it keeps me pretty busy, I can tell you that.
Yeah, that's right. So before we get into all that, though, I want to ask you what it was like working construction in Alaska. That must have been rugged, eh?
You know, I think it's actually where I got a little bit of the flavor for adventure travel because the logistics are 90% of the job. We worked on some very remote projects around Alaska and actually around the world. And so figuring out those challenging logistics, I always feel like it gave me the foundation for what we do now. But yeah, when people start complaining about the cold and things like that, I just kind of have to keep my, just smile and let it go.
Yeah, grin and bear it. Yeah, right. Yeah. What were you doing? Were you on the oil scene or were you doing other things? Road construction? What were you doing?
Mostly support for the oil patch. So, I did a lot of village work. I did a lot of the work with the native villages, building schools, hospitals, cool. Runways, things like that. But, the oil money is what feeds those villages pretty much. So it was related, and we did some oil patch work.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, I was on a raft trip on the North Fork of the Canyon River a few years ago and went into one of those villages. It's amazing how remote and rugged it is up there. I've been to Alaska a number of times, but once you go further north, wow, it's incredible.
Yeah, I spent many, many years. I swear I've been on if there was a landing strip, I've probably been there. I've seen some, I actually enjoyed the village work. I found the people fascinating and the lifestyle interesting. And I actually really, that's really what I liked. I liked getting out there and meeting the real people.
Yeah, very cool. So what was your inspiration to get outdoors? You've been doing that since you were a kid?
Yeah, ironically, I literally grew up in the city. I grew up in San Jose, California. Oh. And literally within a week or two of graduating high school, me and a buddy knew we had to get out of San Jose. We spent every waking hour, weekends, after school, getting out as far as we could get with a tank of gas. And so we knew we were just kind of misplaced there. Mm-hmm. So we left there and we headed for Alaska, actually. Wow. And we made it as far as Oregon. And set up shop there for a few years, worked construction, and really just started fine-tuning our, love of the outdoors. I ended up probably not too long after that starting a small rafting company in the Northwest. That was my first foray into adventure travel, and that was in the mid-'70s. And I did raft trips all over the Northwest and took people out and really realized that I really enjoyed that satisfaction of getting somebody out of their comfort zone, sharing my passion for the outdoors and showing them, that how special it really can be.
Yeah, you won't die out here. You can't live out here.
Right, exactly.
Did you do climbing, rafting? I heard that. Did you do any climbing or just general mountaineering stuff? Rafting?
No, my in those days my thing was rafting because you could bring lots of beer and you could bring steaks and you can bring the one thing about it wasn't backpacking. The one thing about rafting is you could bring the kitchen sink.
Exactly, load up the rubber bus. No kidding. That's awesome. So, what was your first outdoor adventure job? Did you create a job for yourself, guiding, or was it something else?
Well, again, back up in Alaska. So that was in the mid-'70s. And so my first job was actually guiding rafting. Okay. I started out as a weekend warrior myself. And then people kept asking me to take their cousins and their, whatever. And I just ended up bringing more and more people. So we eventually started a little company. But then I moved to Alaska. And there's a joke in Alaska is that, everybody you've ever met in your life wants to come visit you once you move there. So you have nonstop visitors from the lower 48,
Right.
and you're constantly putting together packages for them, whether you're taking them yourself or whether you're, just outlining an itinerary for them.
Mm-hmm.
That's nonstop. I mean, literally, it's a joke in Alaska, but it's actually
It's
true.
reality. Wow. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, anybody that you've ever met now has a friend in Alaska, and they're going to come visit. So it's on everybody's bucket list. So you spend endless hours putting together trips or taking people fishing or whatever. So that's really, I wouldn't say it was a paid job, but that was my real inspiration.
Uh-huh.
And then the segue into it full time was we wanted to open up a second office for the construction company, and we looked around a little bit, and I ended up in Montana. And after a year or so, realized that Alaska contractors have a different idea of profits and margins and things like that versus Montana contractors. So we actually looked for a different business to start. I heard about a company, ended up being Backcountry Tours. I heard about a company that was for sale, and I actually did some secret shopping, went on it as a guest. My first trip was in the Grand Tetons, and as a guest, and my wife and I really enjoyed it, and I thought, wow, this was pretty cool. So we ended up negotiating and actually buying that company.
Oh, cool.
And that was in the mid 90s. And then from there, everything has just evolved over the years.
So Austin Adventures grew out of that then?
It did, yes. That was the foundation. In fact, a couple that owned it, Doug and Carmen McSpadden, I mean, I owe them a lot because they really set the foundation for how we run, the model for how we run the business today.
Oh, cool.
And a lot of the tips and tricks that we learned and a lot of the special things that make us different actually were learned in those early days with Backcountry Tours.
And how long had they been in operation before you bought them?
They'd been in operation about 12 years, I believe.
So they had a long run. Yeah,
yep.
Good. Yeah.
Yep. And they were really pretty much focused on the Yellowstone ecosystem, the Yellowstone area. I mean, they had a few international trips, not really international, but they did go to the Canadian Rockies, and they did go a few, but they really stayed pretty close to home. And so that first year, I mean, I added Alaska, and we added Costa Rica, and we added to try to extend our season out a little bit.
Right.
And then that's been the challenge ever since, is how do we, as we get more and more alumni, how do we always have something fresh for them? And then as we, extend that season out to where it's 52 weeks a year.
Yeah. What do you do all kinds? I haven't looked at your catalog thoroughly yet, but you do treks and rafting and hiking.
We basically, what we do is our main model, our foundation is multi-sport adventures.
Okay.
So they're higher end. We're not typically, we have a few camping trips, but for the most part, we're staying in the nicest lodging available.
Nice.
And we're spending 5 nights, 6 days doing a route, staying 2 or 3 different hotels and visit, as much as we can, just action packed every single day. The guides, we run a strict 6-to-1 guest to guide ratio.
Wow.
So if you've got 12 guests, you've got 2 guides and a 15 passenger van. And everything has been, thought through. I mean, every little detail to get the most out of that week.
That's perfect. Yeah. And you've been in business quite a few years now. So what are you most proud of that you guys have built over the years? That sounds phenomenal.
It's I don't know. It's easy. It's our guides. I really, when I say every single tour operator on the planet, and there's a lot of good ones, they all boast they've got the best guides in the business, and we all probably believe that. Every single year, when I read the evaluations, when I go on a trip and see how hard they work, as I interact with them. These guys, I mean, I think I'm passionate. These guys are crazy. This is what they do. It's what they live for. They get a total charge out of turning somebody on to something new, teaching them something, showing them something. And I've never seen anybody that works so hard as a good guide will actually is worth their weight in gold. And I've never seen anybody work as hard as a good guide does.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I guided on the Kern River for about 6 years, and that's not only made the trips, and I think it helps the clients, but it also makes the job, right? If you're working with a good group of folks, it just builds that camaraderie and teamwork, and it's so much fun.
Yeah, it's been along those same lines. Related to that is it's been interesting to see my kids grow up in the business. My daughter is our operations manager. She guided for years.
Mm-hmm.
In 2014, she was Outside Magazine's #1 guide in the world,
Oh,
and
cool.
all these accolades. And she's just now they work for her, and so it's been really. And she still guides. She'll still go out in a pinch and guide. And she's just phenomenal. She totally gets it. And then my son is similar. My son guides for us. Doesn't guide as much as he used to, because he's following his own passion as a social influencer, I guess they call it.
Okay.
And, he still guides. He's actually shooting a trip for us in Canada right now, so he's quite the photographer. But it's really neat to watch how they've grown in the business and embraced the guiding lifestyle.
Yeah, yeah, and I think guiding sets you up. It just gives you so many skills that you don't realize at the time, I think. And the more you do it, and you go on to something else, you realize, God, I learned that as a guide. I experienced that as a guide. It just really sets you up well, I think.
Yeah, and where I've seen it with my daughter, with both of them, is they're both so well spoken because they end up, they spend their summers sitting at a table with 12 New Yorkers, Chicago, whatever, businessmen, movie stars, you name it.
Right.
And conversing with them on an equal level. Nothing scares them. I mean, they're not intimidated by anything at some point.
Right. That's great. What have been some of the challenges along the way?
Well, I think it's, we're all challenged with just continuing to feed that funnel of new customers.
Right.
We're challenged with making sure we have the right product at the right time, and making sure that we execute. As you go international, you've got, more and more challenges. Their idea of perfection.
Politics.
Yeah, I mean, their idea of perfection might not be our idea of perfection. There's certain countries that'll go unnamed that we really just can't work in because, if we say the trip starts at 8:00 in the morning, we're there at 7:59 and the trip starts. And there's a few countries that they don't get that, and so it's just easier there's so much great product out there that we really don't have to worry about it. But I think it's just keeping up with the growth, keeping up without. One of the things that back to your question a minute ago related is that, what are we most proud of? That we've been able to grow the company and keep that commitment to the customer, that customer satisfaction. We're kind of freaks about that. We want every single guest to go away thinking they just had the best week of their life.
Yeah, well, that's where it's all about. I mean, I think, if the customer has a great time, they're going to tell everybody about it and they're going to come back. So that's perfect. How often do you roll out new trips? Is that an annual thing? You flip the catalog a little bit, or how does that work?
It is. I mean, we'll always have our mainstay stuff.
Sure.
Yellowstone is our #1 selling product, has been for 25 years. And so we'll always keep our top selling product, but we're also always looking for something new. In the midsummer, we start really rolling out the next year's product. Right now, our catalog is on press. I think we've got probably, 8 or 9 new trips. We've got the Azores, we've got Portugal. We've brought back some sometimes we just rotate them in and out of stock.
Yeah.
We've brought back some hiking trips, a really neat one in Cascades National Park.
Cool.
And so we're always looking to how do you keep that lineup fresh, looking for new innovations. Might be a new lodge, or it might be a new type of trip, a new product line, but you have to keep it fresh.
Yeah, right, yeah. What percentage do you do in the U.S. versus international?
Oh, I'd say it's about 55% North America.
Okay.
So Canadian Rockies is pretty strong for us as well.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
But I'd say about 55 to 60% is North America. Pretty strong presence in Europe. We have an office in Nijmegen, Holland, and everything else is scattered literally on all 7 continents. But it's not a big push. We're not putting thousands of people in Antarctica or anything like that.
Right. Yeah, that's a tough one too. Who have been some of the mentors that have helped you along the way?
Well, I knew you were going to ask that question. And I thought about it for a minute. There's really been one consistent voice in my, not just in my business life, but in my life in general. It's a guy by the name of Richard Weiss. And Richard is an icon in the adventure travel industry. He's worked with all of the big guys. He's gone in and helped turn companies around. And he's just, I used to joke and call him Yoda. He's just one of those calming influences. And when I'm, scattered with the day to day, I can still call him up and say, "Hey man, what do you think about this?" And I always give him a hard time because his first response is, "Huh." and then pause. And it's like, okay, now seriously, I'm gonna have to get more than out of you.
Right.
But it's a very calming So Richard has really been good. Really taught me a lot about product line and about one of the bad habits. If I had any advice for some of these smaller companies starting out, is we fall in love with product, and we fall in love with it as tour operators,
Sure,
and then it doesn't sell, it's not profitable, but we can't bring ourselves to get rid of it because it's a great trip. It's a really great trip,
right.
But that great trip's going to put you out of business if you keep trying to run it.
Yeah. I think that's true for a lot of businesses. I experienced that on the product side of the world. You just create this product where you just think it's the coolest pack ever and everybody inside loves it, but it just can't sell, and you keep trying and trying and trying, and at some point you got to kill it.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah, it's tough. Yeah. How about tell us about some nonprofit work that you do? Who do you guys work with on the nonprofit side?
Oh, we do a lot of little stuff with the national park system. So every year we adopt a park, and we work closely with the local park association, like whether it be Yellowstone Association or Glacier National Park Association. The national parks are always struggling for funding. So we donate $100 from every guest. We pick a park every year called Adopt a Park, and then $100 from each guest going to that park goes to that association. But our real passion, our own nonprofit is a program called Wheels of Change. We started, I don't know, 7 or 8 years ago. Maybe it's been 9 years ago now. And what we do is in the U.S. alone, they throw away 10 million mountain bikes a year. Go to the landfill.
Wow, really?
Yeah, it's an unbelievable number. And so a friend of mine in Africa, Namibia, turned me on to this program. As he actually managed it and founded it. It was his idea. But basically, you take a 40-foot shipping container, you take 425 discarded mountain bikes in good shape but needing work, stack them into these shipping containers, ship the shipping container to a location in Africa or wherever, and then the container actually becomes a working bike shop.
Oh,
we
cool.
then train locals on how to fix the bikes. We fix them. We teach them how to order parts. We teach them. We've added a few elements over the years where we teach them how to run guided bike tours in the village. We teach them how to lease the bikes to lodges. We're selling them all.
Wow.
And we have last year we worked with the Jordan tourism board. Actually, we opened up 4 shops in Jordan. Our first time out of Africa.
Very cool.
Which was pretty cool. But I'm pretty passionate about Namibia, and we probably have 30 shops up and running in Namibia.
That's awesome.
Yeah, we try and do 1 shop a year. It's tough. It's a lot of work. Collecting the bikes is the easy part, but everything else takes work. But we've got 2 containers sitting on the ground at our shop now in Billings, Montana, loaded up, ready to go. We're just trying to figure out where we're going to ship them. So
that's great. I had no idea we threw away that many mountain bikes. That's sad, but it's great that you guys figured out something to do with them. That's awesome.
Yeah, and there's a lot of good organizations similar to this. It's not a unique model, but there's a lot that do it that are not a lot. There's a few that it really works well. And mountain bikes are perfect transportation, especially for the deserts of Namibia.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, well, we'll link to that in the show notes. That's great. Do you have any? Oh, let's skip that for a minute. What other outdoor activities do you participate in yourself? Obviously you get on the river every summer, I'm sure, or more frequently than that.
Yep. I would consider myself an avid fisherman.
Okay.
I love to fish. It's my safe place. I'll go out in my boat and go fishing for a few hours and just really unwind.
Nice.
In this business, you're always connected to your cell phone. I mean, literally 24/7. Every single guest gets my cell phone or my business card with my cell number on it. Any issues at all, call me. And it's funny. You'll be out on the river and just completely enjoying and the not a good fish bite or whatever, and the cell phone will ring, but it's definitely better to take it on the river in your boat than it is at your desk. So spend a lot of time in my boat fishing. I'll always like hiking. I mean, my whole family are just all avid hikers. So anytime we can get out and get on the trails. That's great. And then of course cycling. We're a pretty big cyclist as well. So
Great.
just about anything. I mean, it's just literally. My daughter now, she's getting a little bit serious. She just ran an Ironman yesterday, so she's
Wow.
taking it to the extremes. We're a little bit more we're a little more casual. The
Yeah.
rest of us.
Yeah. I used to do that years ago. I'm too old for that now.
Exactly.
So do you have any advice for folks that maybe want to get into the adventure travel biz or are already in the biz and want to grow their career?
Well, one thing I was thinking about is just it's interesting is I see a lot of small companies that get into it for the lifestyle, and that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
But you should make that decision early on. Is this a lifestyle or is it a business?
Yeah.
Do I want to run it? Do I want to travel the world and I want some way to pay for traveling the world, or do I literally want to make a career and a business out of this?
Mm-hmm.
And because it'll be a slightly different path for either. I mean, but and both are good. I'm not saying you have to choose one or the other
Right.
for any one reason other than just make sure that you make a conscious decision to go in that direction that's really going to fulfill what you're looking for.
No, that's good advice. There's so many. It seems like there's so many. I'm going to call them internet gurus nowadays, talking about create your lifestyle, and they talk about all these things that they throw out there as lifestyle businesses. But even if you have a lifestyle business like adventure travel, you got to focus on the customer and give a good product. Otherwise, you don't have a business.
Yeah, or you're going to constantly be fighting it. You're going to be constantly, one foot out the door, right? I mean, you really have to decide what direction you're going to go. And if you want to, buy a 15-passenger van, and I know a lot of people that do this, buy a 15-passenger van, and you and your wife guide trips, and or in the national parks, and just take 12 guests, and that's you're happy and comfortable with that. More power to you.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. So a lot of folks are doing that. I see that going on in some of the parks, and I've always wondered: is that a business, or is that just some guy and his buddies?
Well, unfortunately, in the U.S., there's not a lot of barriers to entry.
Yeah.
Our joke is, you got a dozen bikes in a van, you're in business.
Interesting.
We Canadian Rockies or Canada, they have a lot more credentials, a lot more certifications, a lot more challenges, and it's getting a little bit more challenging in the U.S., mostly with insurance requirements and things like that.
Yeah,
but
permits and stuff. Yeah, it's easier in the parks than it
exactly.
is in the national forest. You're right. Some of the national forests, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. 100% is. Yep.
Yeah, that's tough.
But even that, getting the permits, getting the rooms in the parks, getting, a lot of the parks are I was just reading this morning about how Glacier National Park is, up 30%. They're struggling to deal with it in all aspects.
Yeah, they are so underfunded. It's really sad what's going on. Do you have any daily routines you use to keep your sanity? Do you meditate? You obviously get a lot of exercise, I'll bet. Fish, that's a good
coffee.
Coffee.
Is coffee a routine?
Yep, that's mine. I have that routine every morning.
I actually am fortunate. I live out on the Yellowstone River out of Billings, and I have a nice back deck that overlooks the river and the valley. And I have I'll go out there and drink a cup of coffee with my notepad.
Mm-hmm.
And before I ever start my day, as the sun's coming up, watch all the different, we have lots of different animals running around, and drink a couple cups of coffee and just kind of start with I wouldn't say it's meditation. It's just start before I get to the whole clutter of emails and and all that. Just a little bit of just kind of me time, just to kind of chill out. Just take a couple of good deep breaths and appreciate what I have, and then start my day.
That's awesome.
And in this world, I probably deal with 300 emails a day, and it's So before I hit that open button on Outlook, I want to make sure that I just taking a couple of deep breaths. Appreciate what I got. Now let's go to work.
Yeah, clear the head. Exactly. How about books? Do you have any favorite books, or do you give books as gifts very often?
You're probably going to laugh at me. Well, the ones I give as gifts, I'll tell you about that in a minute, but you'll probably laugh at me. Some of my favorite books are the old school ones. I mean, I really like the old motivational speakers like Napoleon Hill, Clement Stone.
Yeah.
Some of those old classics, right? I mean, Success Through a Positive Mental Attitude was probably written in the 40s, and it's every bit as appropriate today as it was back then.
Great. Awesome.
It's really, and it's an easy read. I mean, it really is an easy read, and you can read it 40 times. I bet I've read it probably at least 10. I've given it to all my kids.
Oh, cool.
And it's just just a good kind of, again, that feel good, motivational, simple read, things you can digest. It's along those same lines, Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. And then, you got to give him credit. He's a little bit corny, but, and he's becoming a mega star. But, if you remember back, Tony Robbins' original book, Awaken the Gorilla Within.
Oh, right. Yeah, that's right.
Or actually, I take that back. Awaken the Giant Within.
Giant, yeah. I think I've actually listened to that. I haven't read it, but yeah. No, yeah. Yeah, he's blown up. Holy cow.
Yeah, it's a little bit crazy. He's a little bit much for me now, but that was a really good. I remember reading that book when I was literally starting the business, and it was a good read.
Yeah, cool.
But as gifts, we've recently started a relationship with the good folks, John and Bert Jacobs, that founded Life is Good,
cool.
the brand, and they wrote a really fun book called Life is Good. And so I've got, dozens and dozens of copies of that. And it's a very, very fun book about how they started the Life is Good brand and their fundamentals and their the keys to their success. And it's a great book. It's a fun read.
Oh, cool. I'll get that. I don't think I've read that one. We'll link to all these in the show notes, folks, so you can get links to those and pick them up yourself. Anything else you'd like to ask of our listeners or say to our listeners before we wrap up?
Well, just always looking to communicate, I guess, is the word I'd look for. Communicate with both, travelers, fellow entrepreneurs in the business. What are you guys looking at? In other words, I think what served me well over the last 25 years, gosh, it's been a long time, is just listening. Yeah. I really enjoy listening. I like to hear. You learn more by listening than you ever do speaking. So, I'm always asked to speak at these different events and stuff, and I'd much rather go listen to the other speakers because it's a chance to learn something.
Yeah,
so
that's great advice. Yeah, I like that too. That's what's so fun about this podcast. I just get on and ask the questions and get to listen. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, just so reach out anytime. That's
I
love the industry.
Yeah,
they can. It's easy. Of course, I'm on email 24/7, Dan@austinadventures.com.
Okay.
And they can also go to our website, austinadventures.com.
Cool, yeah.
And they can find, lots of different ways to link, and they ask a question, and sooner or later it comes across my desk.
Cool.
So I think the web and the email is probably the best.
Yep. Okay. Well, we'll link to that in the show notes too. Well, I appreciate the time this morning, Dan. It's been great talking to you.
Yeah, it's been fun. Thanks.
Yeah, hope we get to meet face to face somewhere on a fishing adventure or something.
Anytime you're in Montana, come on out. I'll take you out on the river.
All right, sounds good. Thanks. Have a great morning.
All right, take care.
All right, bye-bye. I hope you got some nuggets out of that conversation with Dan Austin. You can follow up with Dan by email at dan@austinadventures.com or find him on the web at austinadventures.com. Austin is spelled AUSTIN. You'll find links to everything we discussed in the show notes at the outdoorbizpodcast.com/episode 124. Be sure to hit your favorite podcast app and subscribe today. Thanks for listening. Today's podcast is brought to you by WordPress. I've used WordPress to build a number of websites, including Stillwater's Consulting and the Outdoor Biz Podcast. There are a number of themes and plugins available, both free and for purchase, enabling you to easily create the custom look and feel you want. If you're starting an online business, publishing a blog, and looking to take your online presence to the next level, visit theoutdoorbizpodcast.com/WordPress and get going today. With simple installation tools and thousands of themes to choose from, you'll be up and running in no time. Go to theoutdoorbizpodcast.com/WordPress and get your site launched today. If you want more of the Outdoor Biz Podcast, you can subscribe on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, or your favorite podcast app. Be sure to go to theoutdoorbizpodcast.com where you'll find all the links to the episodes, show notes, and much, much more. And be sure to make time to get outside and take someone with you.